Good evening. I'm Councilwoman Xanthia Alver. This is a Public Works Committee. The meeting is now called to order. It's Monday, November the 14th, 2022. I'm the Vice Chair. At this time, I will call for the roll for those members of the committee first. Councilwoman Linda Gray. Councilmember Linda Gray. Next, we have Councilmember Chris Johnson.
Present.
Next, we have Councilmember James Padola.
Present.
Next, we have Councilmember Albert Mills.
Present.
Next, we have President Ernest Trippy Congo. Next, we have a non-committee members, Councilwoman Yolanda McCoy.
Here.
Do we have any other council members on Zoom?
Councilmember Darby.
Councilwoman Darby. Okay. As a friendly reminder, only members of the committee should be making motions or seconding them. Okay, with that being said, we're going to go straight to the agenda. The first item on the agenda is resolution to approve the Police Department's grant application to United States Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs FY22 Local Law Enforcement Crime Gun Intelligence Center Interrogation Initiative. Do we have the chief or anyone here to speak?
Yes, Chairman Oliver, Chief Robert Tracy, I could speak to this.
Sure, please do.
Okay, is a resolution approving the Police Department's grant application to the United States Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, FY 2022, Local Law Enforcement Crime Gun Intelligence Center Integration Initiative. This is a grant offered by United States Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs. We've applied for $686,433 in funding to support this initiative, and this is over a 3-year period. So this is a total for the 3-year period. This funding would support a collaboration between our department, the Delaware Department of Justice, and the Police Executive Research Forum to expand our existing Crime Gun Intelligence Center, which involves a strong and lasting, long-standing partnership with the U.S. Department of Justice Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives to assist in the investigation of gun violence and firearm offenses in our city. This grant would allow us to hire a contractual forensic firearms examiner and purchase necessary equipment to expand our forensics laboratory to allow for a full in-house examination of firearm ballistic evidence. This will enhance our efficiency of our investigations and alleviate the current need to rely on outside agencies to complete some of these examinations. There is no matching funds from the city required.
Thank you, Chief. Do we have any members that have any questions? Yes, Councilwoman McCoy, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair.
Sure.
No, I just wanted to be clear. So you actually are stating that moving forward, we will not need outside agencies for ballistic evidence. So anything that I guess that we find when it comes to shells or casings or whatever will all be in-house now?
Yes, Councilwoman, we actually, when I talk about outside assistance, we actually are in-house with everything we do. We got 2 forensic technicians. We are a crime gun intelligence center. We actually are a regional intake center, so other police departments bring their ballistic evidence towards us. What happens is hiring a forensics examiner. This is more detailed. This is a person that can enter evidentiary procedures for us, where we would have to have someone from the state police lab look at this. This eliminates that we have to send this all the way down to the state police. Now we're fully keeping everything here. We did all the preliminary ballistic information in-house, but when it came to evidencing procedures, we had to send it down to that firearms forensic examiner in the state police. Now this expedites a lot of things, and since we're doing most of the work and probably more work than they're doing down in the state, this is certainly a win for us in the city of Wilmington to help us with our gun investigations and reducing violence.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay. Chris, do you have a question?
Madam Chair.
Yes, next, Councilmember James Spadola.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. What happens after the 3-year term of the grant is up in terms of the cost for it?
Well, it's like we've done with the Real-Time Crime Center. We'll look to see if we can continue getting funding on the same type of grant, and/or we would have to come back after 3 years and see, is it something that is worthwhile to keep and try to roll into our own budget, or try to find some other funding, sir?
And just worst case scenario, let's say we did it for 3 years, but then we couldn't get the funding and it went back to the way it was. Would there be any hiccups with investigations?
No, there wouldn't, because we would go back, we would have to go back. There'd be a little bit of a delay, but certainly most of the models have this. We're just a little bit behind, and I would certainly look to see if I could find funding. But like you said, worst case scenario, we would look to see how much better and how much more efficient, is it certainly something that we can try to roll into our budget.
Thank you.
Okay, Chief, so you said there's, Councilman Darby? Councilmember Darby, I see your hand is up.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to have my hand up.
Okay. So Chief, you said there is no, I see there's no fiscal impact from the city, so this is strictly money y'all went after, is that correct?
That's correct, ma'am.
Okay, any more questions from council members? If not, is there any questions from the public? If there's no question, I'm sorry, any questions from the public? I'm sorry, repeat that, Wendell. He said no. Okay, so we don't have any public comment? Okay, if there's no public comment, Chief Tracy, that would be all. Thank you so much. This will be on the agenda. Kendra, could you give me the date? Nope, you said December the 3rd? December the 1st. This should be on the agenda for December the 1st, Chief.
Okay, thank you, Council Chair. Thank you, council members.
Sure, have a good night.
Good night.
Sure. Next, we have, we did change the agenda. We have a discussion on diversity from the fire department. That would be bullet 2. Is there anyone here from the fire department who will discuss the diversity on the fire department's leadership? There should be somebody here. Okay, who is here to speak regarding the diversity in the fire department's leadership?
Good evening, committee members and all council members. This was actually a request from City Council. So we would respond to any pointed questions. Otherwise, the chief is just going to go over the actual process for promoting if there's no other questions.
Okay, the chief here? Okay, Chief Looney, could you speak regarding the promotions? You're on mute. Okay, Chief? Can't hear you. No sound, Chief.
Can you hear?
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Very good. All right.
Okay.
Good evening, Councilwoman Oliver and all the other council people, council members. As Chief of Staff indicated, I'm going to explain to you our promotional system that's been in place for several years. We have an outside third-party vendor that conducts our promotional process every 2 years. That way it keeps the department out of the testing process. There's 2 phases to the promotional exam. There's a written exam, and then there's oral assessment. Once all the candidates or participants go through both phases and are completed, the outside vendor then accumulates the scores for each candidate, and they're in a banded system, very similar to what the police do. In the banding system, there'll be individuals in up to 3-4 bands. We're not able to go on to the additional bands until we exhaust everyone in the first band. Everybody gets an opportunity to take the test after they have achieved senior firefighter status. We just recently, the new list was published in June of 2022. I take other questions as it pertains to that, but that's a pretty brief overview of our promotional system and how we come to the banding and our candidates and where they are banded.
Okay, I think it was supposed to be a little bit more discussion on diversity in the fire department. You telling me that's it?
I had some questions.
Sure. Councilwoman
Thank you.
Darby?
Yes, so the band system that you speak of, I just want to make sure this is correct and people know that this is not for leadership position, that this is for, I don't know what in my head, I use military terms for like lower ranking people, right? There's higher ranking NCOs, and then there's lower ranking people who are regular enlisted. So this is for not leadership, but this is for, I don't know what word you guys use, but if you could tell me the proper word I could use, but this is not for leadership. This is actually for lower ranking. And then also, before you answer that question, that is correct. There is a band system, and they do take the test, which I think is fair, and you get in your band, right? But if there's, let's say, 10 people in my band, there is no ranking order of who goes. It's all based on your discretion as the chief of fire. You make a discretion based on the band. So yes, you can't move to the next band. So if you're in band A, everyone has to go in band A. But let's say there are 9 white firefighters and 1 black one, and the black one may be qualified. But if you want to select someone else in that band, you can, right? So I just want to confirm those things, and then I'm going to ask questions about the leadership promotions.
Okay.
Yes, the promotional system is it's
Excuse
for
me,
our,
excuse me, Chief, we're gonna keep some order here. Go ahead, you can speak.
okay, the promotional system, to answer Councilwoman Darby's question, it's for our lieutenants and captains. That's what we're testing for. Firefighters wishing to take the test for lieutenant, and then lieutenants wishing to take the test for captain. That's where we use our promotional system, and that's where the third-party vendor comes in. Councilwoman Darby, she did indicate she is correct. Once the bands are, created by that company, then yes, it's the chief that has the ultimate decision of, who he or she will choose.
May I follow up?
Excuse me, I didn't hear the last part, Chief, I'm sorry.
The chief, ultimately, once the bands are established, the chief, yes, he or she does have the ultimate decision on who's going to be promoted. We only do this promotional process, the written and oral assessments for our lieutenants and captains. When you get to the level of battalion chief, that there is no testing for that, and that's appointment by the chief of fire.
Okay, Councilman Darby, you could follow up, then we have some other questions.
Yes, thank you, Council Chair. So I want to confirm that when selecting from the band for lieutenants and captains, which are not leadership positions, there is no written down procedure or criteria at all to how someone is selected. It's just solely based on your discretion. And you can say that in your head that you have a process, but there is no written procedure or process to how someone is selected other than your sole discretion.
Councilwoman Darby, that's correct. There is no written policy or procedures. The chief, I know how I've done it in my short time here for a year and a half. I review the person in the band that we're considering. I look at everybody's personnel file, their attendance records, their discipline, their experience and education, and that's where I make my choice. And depending on the need for the department at the time.
Yes, thank you. And then for the upper leadership, there's no testing, no exam, there is nothing. It's just solely based on who you want to select, correct?
Excuse
Yes, for the battalion chief, yes, that is correct. There is no testing. That's normally the executive staff. We review the battalion chief or the captains that are already captains. We review their files, and then that's when we make a decision on that appointment of that battalion chief. And just to correct, our lieutenants and captains, they're actually in a leadership role. They're in charge of personnel. They're assigned to a certain engine company or ladder company and station, and they have personnel that are assigned to them. Lieutenant, is the first step in the supervisory role. Then we move to a captain, and then the captain takes on a larger role where they're in charge of a station, more personnel, and then after captain, they move on to the battalion chief position.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any council members with any questions before I ask my question? President Trippicongo, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, thank you for joining us. Are there any promotions coming up?
That hasn't been, yes, there is going to be promotions coming up. It just has not been made official of the retirements that are coming.
Okay, will there be any opportunity for minorities to be a part of that promotional process?
I don't see why not. I don't see why not.
Okay. How would you grade the diversity in leadership in the fire department?
I think obviously it needs improvement. One of our biggest issues is for so many years, the classes we were hiring, they weren't diversified classes. And we recognized that in the last couple of years, and we went aggressive with our recruitment. The last 20 years or so, it just, we haven't had the diverse classes, and now, we don't have that we don't have the diversity in the ranks. And then on top of that, we have to have, minorities have to take the test. We offer the test, and, that hurts us too. If, they're not willing, they don't want to take the test. We've even this year, this past promotional process, which has never happened before, we're trying to, set everybody up for success. We put together a study program for everyone that was going to participate in the promotional program, written test preparation and oral assessment preparation, which was well received.
All right, thank you. I have a follow-up.
Sure. Go ahead, Mr. President.
Do you think that blacks and Hispanics have been promoted on the same, I guess, equitably over the last?
I can only answer for when I've been the chief for a year and a half.
No, but you've been a part of the fire department for how long?
30 years.
All right, so in your view, I know you weren't in charge, you weren't the one who was making the decisions, but tell me your feelings about that, please.
Chiefs in the past, we've had 4 black fire chiefs, 3 white fire chiefs, going all the way back. It depended on who was in those bands. I would rather not, say if it was fair or not. I mean, I think we're still dealing with the same issues we had then. The amount of people, the amount of minorities that want to take the test. And we're trying to improve that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilman McCoy, then I have a question.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Chief, so my question basically goes to, I guess, how many, when it comes to diversity, who's actually in the fire department? I believe that we may be having an issue with retention. Are we putting any type of retention clauses when it comes to those who are in our academy, trying to retain those who are training, so diligently?
With this process, this past process, we were looking to get a contract in place, but that we were unable to do so. Some of our retention, these are, some of the candidate or some of the recruits that have left, they went to other departments, and some just made life changes, going to college full time and relocating. It is a concern of ours, and yes, we're addressing it. We're addressing it on the command level in the headquarters. I think we've done a great job with recruitment in these last, 2 classes. But yes, retainment is important. I mean, we're investing a lot of money into these recruits, and it's a great department. We want them to stay here. We want them to make a 30+ year career.
Yes, please follow up.
So you said that you wanted to put together, some type of contract. What was the hindrance that you were unable to get that done?
We couldn't get it done in time. And we were working with, HR, and it happened too late and we couldn't get it put together in time.
Okay,
The class has started today.
okay. So I do hope that, I'm sorry, I just wanted to see that you continue working on this so for our next academy class, it is something that's already, in writing.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, sure, 1 second. Captain Looney, so as you stated, this has been an ongoing problem, not just since you've taken office. In 2013, it's been 17 white males that's been promoted to rank grade of captain. 1 black male was overlooked 5 times. Since, so even going back to Patrick, 114 firefighters have been hired since Patrick's administration. 41 were minorities, 36% of the 114. And of the 41 hired, 22 are still employed. That's 19% of the 114. So there has been an ongoing problem with the fire department way before you became captain, in charge. But as my colleague said, this does need to be changed. At some point, we can't continue to overlook these minorities who are up for promotions. Right now, and it looks like it's 2 up for promotions. And at some point, somebody has to make a change, or this is just going to be an ongoing problem. And it just doesn't look good for the whole department as a whole. Next, we have any more questions from council members? Yes. So did you hear me?
Yes, Councilwoman, I heard you. And we currently do not have 2 openings. That once we have the retirement of our officer here, one of our high-ranking officers, then that will be, the promotions would be made at the end of the month, but currently we do not have 2 openings.
Okay, well, I know you have 2 of them that are looking for, to be promoted to lieutenant. So nevertheless, Councilman Mills?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chief, and I appreciate your comments. My question is in reference to, you said there was no written policy, and I was just trying to wonder, is there any thought to creating a written policy for the promotion process?
Yes, that's something we can definitely look into to, make this, a lot, streamline that process and aid chiefs, myself and other chiefs, moving forward. That's something that, yeah, we could research into that and put our heads together.
Thank you, sir.
Good question. Any more, President Conga?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, when's the last time the department promoted a black captain?
A black captain.
Yes.
I would have to find out for you. I know it's not in my last year and a half. I would have to check on that, President Congo. I'm not sure when that was.
Okay, you can send that to
Yep.
Chairwoman Oliver. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from anyone from the public?
Madam Chairwoman, you have questions from Councilwoman Shanae Darby and Chief of Staff Tanya.
Oh, Councilman, let's go to Chief of Staff Tanya Washington.
Thank you. I just wanted to say for the record that I've been here for a very long time, and I'm very proud of the work that Chief Looney has done, particularly in regards to promotions, since he's taken over as chief. Since he's taken over that position, he has promoted 3 minorities. And mind you, he's only been in that position for a year and a half. In addition to that, I am also proud, and you saw the press release on our current recruit class and the makeup of that class. Because what that says is that as we continue to increase the minorities in our recruit class, that's going to determine what our overall firefighters, our force looks like. And that will, in and of itself, be able to put us in a position where we will have more promotions, hopefully more minorities willing to take the test. And that's the key to all of this. The minorities have to be willing to take the test in order to get themselves in a position where they can be promoted. We cannot make anyone take the test, but we want them to take the test, and that makes it that much more easier for us. Thank you.
Council President Congo.
I think Darby. Did Darby have a question? I'll go after her.
Oh, Councilman Darby, I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you. I think we all can say we're proud of our fire department, but we still have work to do. And I do want to state that taking the test is one of the issues or problem, but we also have a history of this as I don't know if everyone's familiar with the Wilmore Decree, which no one has been able to tell me if it's still in effect when there's no date on it expiring, that Black and brown firefighters should have equitable promotions, and it hasn't been happening. And the Wilmore Decree was back in the 70s or 80s when a white firefighter went to the court system to sue the city, or somebody, over promotions because he thought white firefighters were being discriminated against, and it backfired on him. And they found out that actually Black firefighters were being discriminated against for promotion. So this is a history and a foundation of our department since Black folks and brown people have been able to get into our department. And when we talk about recruitment, yes, we have more Black and brown, but the retention rate is very low for Black and brown firefighters. And we have to talk about what are we going to do about the toxic, racist work environment that Black and brown firefighters are calling me about, reporting about the fire department. And I have other firefighters who are not Black and brown who are calling me, telling me about retaliation for them making complaints or reporting something that happened. And also, when we look at disciplinary records, that the same firefighters would do something, but the Black and brown firefighters would get more severe punishment than the white ones for the same exact behavior. So those things, we're talking about recruiting, and we're talking about putting some type of clause or whatever for retention, but you're asking people to stay into a toxic work environment isn't fair either. When the fire department needs to be working on that very culture, which is very toxic, and it's been in the newspaper plenty of times. So what are we going to do about the toxic, racist, implicit bias work environment that people are reporting that they're in?
Thank you. Next, I have Chris Johnson.
Just as a follow-up to my colleague, Councilmember Darby, I think I probably speak for all of council, and of course, because of my legal background, I just have to say that if there is a hostile work environment claim, City Council, of course, is one avenue to voice, but you need to seek a legal recourse. There are protections. There's whistleblower protections at the state and federal level. So if you are a firefighter and experiencing this, besides just reaching out to us, we can't file a lawsuit on your behalf. Not saying you should sue the city, but if this is indeed happening, there is a legal recourse and protection. Actually, you're more protected if you file a claim than if you don't file a claim and you get fired for something else. So I'm just putting it out there for the, as a council member who has a background in this, please take the proper protections, file the appropriate claim with HR, and that way at least the legal protections start to kick in. So if there is retaliation, you are covered. There's also the Delaware Department of Labor Anti-Discrimination Office you can call. You can also call the EEOC as well, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. That's in Philadelphia. So again, just as a FYI, what I heard was very concerning, and I've heard it from Council President as well and others. If that's happening, please step up, because the anonymous calls or names, that doesn't help us create change. So thank you for helping us, and if there are people in the department and police department as well, in any department in the city, please take the proper recourse and file with HR. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Tanny has her own.
Tanny, do you have, I'm sorry,
Chief of
Chief,
Staff.
do you have another?
I just want to say that we ought to be very careful when we make those types of comments. I'm glad Councilmember Johnson put some context behind it, but those were very salacious remarks. And not unless we're actually a part of the Wilmington Fire Department, we cannot state something of that nature as fact. Not unless somebody comes and present it as fact. If we're not a part of that organization, then I will refrain from making such salacious remarks. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, I just have one question.
Sure, Council, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Chief, just because of what I just actually heard from Councilman Darby, I just wanted to ask whether or not the department does any type of racial sensitivity training. I'm sorry, I didn't know whether or not you heard me. Whether or not the department actually did any type of racial sensitivity training or things of that nature to make certain that we are seeing everyone, I guess, as, you know, for their individuality or whatever it is that needs to happen to get rid of, like, I guess, the lack of confidence for the minorities who are not taking the test.
We've had the annual training that the city's Human Resource Department offers.
Okay.
We haven't gone out and, you know, solicited for other programs other than what HR has delivered to all employees.
That's all I needed to know. Thank you, Chief.
Sure, Councilman Spadola.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, I just want to say diversity is always important, and so is having a well-qualified fire department with qualified people in all those positions. So I encourage you to always select the most qualified person to promote while encouraging more minorities to take the test. Thank you.
Absolutely, sir.
Okay, Chief, thanks for coming on. We have any, I'm sorry. Next
All right,
we,
everybody, have a great evening. Thank you.
no, 1 second, I'm not done. Do we have anyone from the public? I thought, okay, next we have President Congo. Take your time.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to respond to Chief of Staff's comments, and I guess I know it's frustrating as a council member to hear her remarks. Now, so I know it must be even more frustrating for those in the fire department who are living through what Councilwoman Darby expressed. And I guess my frustration is that her comments weren't geared towards helping to come up with a solution, but rather don't even talk about it. And I think that's why we are in the position where we are now. We have firefighters who are extremely concerned about their work environment, about not being promoted, about not being treated fairly. And I think it's our responsibility as council members to talk about it. Firefighters can't always or don't always want to come forward because of fear of retaliation. So until there is some type of unified effort to file a class action suit or whatever avenue they may go, it's our responsibility to talk about it. We're not making it up. The facts are here. We're talking about the facts that there aren't equitable promotions for Black and Latinos, and there hasn't been for decades. So I think it would be extremely irresponsible for us not to talk about it. And that's how solutions come forward, is when we talk about it, we address it head on, and we try to fix it as a city. But just to hear those kind of concerns and not talk about it, I think would be extremely irresponsible for us as a council. So I'm going to continue to talk about it. I'm not making this stuff up. I have firefighters who come to me, and I'm sure the other council members do, with concerns. So it's our responsibility, again, just to talk about it publicly so we can try to fix it. Thank you.
I totally agree. Any more questions? Okay, sorry about that. Next, thank you, Chief Looney. We will move on to our next agenda item.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
you. Have a good evening.
Sure. Next, we will have ordinance 22040, ordinance to amend Chapter 2, the Wilmington City Code relating to the Citizens Complaint Review Board. Councilman Darby.
Yes, thank you. So this piece of legislation is to enhance, improve already what has been established for our Civilian Review Board. So we had it in effect for, I guess this is year 2, because we had $50,000. The first year, we got $50,000. The second year, this would just, one, add to Section H, funding minimum. And I think this is important as we're talking about establishing the Civilian Review Board, and it's funded through the Mayor Administration, that we talk about sustainability, we talk about longevity, and making true investment into police reform and community policing. So we have to have a funding minimum, and it should be enough to run the Civilian Review Board. In Section F, I removed mention that the appointment by the mayor could be police related. Currently, right now, on the Civilian Review Board, no one could be police related except for the person the Mayor Administration, the mayor appoints. And that person they appoint would be ahead of the Civilian Review Board, so they would be the lead in making a lot of decisions. So allowing the Mayor Administration to select potentially someone with a police law enforcement background would lose exactly what a community review board is for. And best practices show that community review boards are successful when there are community experts on the board, not police officers or law enforcement related people. Number 3, in Section E, change to all meetings of the board shall be public, unless information must be confidential to protect the safety and privacy of the complainants. So in the legislation currently, it says that it's at the discretion of the Civilian Review Board to release information about the board meetings. This, however, makes it say that everything has to be public, unless it's to protect the complainant. So like if it's something that's like a allegation of sexual assault or something and needs to protect, someone's privacy for whatever reason, then yes, let's not make it public. But everything needs to be public. It should not be at the discretion of the board to make that decision. It is a community review board, so the community should be able to read all notes about any meetings happening.
Okay.
For D, we're going to change, and the last change is for Section D. I'm going to change it to such board member nominations shall be subject to public notice and public hearing before affirming appointments to the board. So there should be conversation about who is on the Civilian Review Board, who will be serving on it. It should not just be a decision made without the public making a decision, and for City Council to make a decision too on who's appointed to the board, or, well, really not who's appointed, but confirming who is appointed to that board and agreeing to that. So those are the 4 changes that have been made. And I want to say that we do have a contract with, I think the abbreviation is NACOLA. They'll be providing up to 120 hours of consultant work to the city of Wilmington to assist us with the technical aspect and consideration related to implementing the Citizens Review Board, which I am excited for. I think that contract for it was for about $25,000. I believe they're supposed to be starting, haven't received the update yet on that. So I'm excited for them to come implement our Civilian Review Board, but there are a few things in that legislation that needed to be improved to make sure that we're protecting the community, that we're able to collect the data that we need, because currently right now, we do not have access and decision-making power to police records. However, this can be the foundation to collecting the data so that later on we can have that on a state level pass when we have data to prove that this is needed, right? So right now we're going to have monitoring power, audit power, but we won't really have access to records, and we'll be able to review, but we won't really have much decision-making powers about what happens in the case. But at least we could do some data collection. We could get the information that we need, and we could start a process, because Leah Board will be repealed because the State General Assembly faces changing every year as we have more progressive people and liberal people running for office. So I am going to open it up for any questions, comments for this piece of legislation.
Sure, hold on one second. Next, we will have Council Member Chris Johnson.
Yes, thank you for highlighting this, Councilmember Darby. Although this is somewhat quite troubling because this is something that folks have been working on for years. In effect, I was the original sponsor of the original bill back in 2020. And there's some issues just with how this gets done, because right now the way the state law is, SB 149 did not pass. And I don't know if it's gonna pass. If you pay attention to what's going on in Dover, a lot of the same leadership is the same. So I don't know if it will indeed pass. So we have to work within the confines that we have. And it takes negotiation between the administration, police department, and everyone in the community. I agree there needs to be changes and tweaks, but I think some of these changes may not go over well. And if the department blacks out completely from this, then we will have nothing. And that's going to upset the community more. Because if I've talked with members of the police department, in leadership, in rank and file, and also the FOP, they have concerns about a fully non-law enforcement board. They want at least a representative. So I have to take into account that perspective, where they want one seat out of, say, 10. So, I would implore you, because of these concerns, I would like to work with you on this. In Nicole, now that we have the consultants and we can put out a good bill. So at this time, I would make a motion to hold ordinance 22-40.
Second.
Aye.
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 Okay, there's been a motion on the floor to hold it for Chris and Councilman Darby to have a conversation. I mean, I just assumed maybe y'all talked about this. So,
There wasn't a vote, Madam Chair.
say that again.
I don't know if we did it aye or we didn't do in favor and any opposed.
No,
We just did it.
no, I'm going to go over it.
Okay.
I was just making a comment. So Councilman Johnson moved a motion, it's been second, and we can do a head count of the members who are in favor to hold this legislation so they can have a conversation about it. I can do a voice call. So Councilman Johnson,
Aye for holding.
Councilman Spadola,
Aye.
Councilman Mills,
Aye.
Councilman Oliver, aye. Councilman Congo.
Nay.
So it's Councilman Gray's not here. So 1, 2, 3, 4 ayes and 1 nay. The motion is Councilman Chris Johnson's motion is passed to hold this legislation until y'all two talk about it. Councilman Gray.
Thank you.
Sure. Next piece of legislation. Okay, Councilman Darby, would you like to say something? And then it'll come back to, Councilman Darby, would you like to say something?
Yes, I can speak to my last legislation, or you talking about for the next one?
No, I'm going to come to the next piece of legislation would be Resolution This is a resolution urging administration to adopt a Board of Coordinated Public Safety Strategy.
Come on. Yes, so I was going to talk about this resolution tonight, but I have about 2 firefighters who reached out to me, so I need to add some more to it because about internal complaints and how that should be handled, because there's retaliation that people are telling me about. I'm not making it up. So I'm gonna hold this because I need to make some tweaks to this public safety strategy where it talks about having a public safety director. It talks about different things within the legislation to make our public safety better.
No problem. So you're gonna hold this piece of legislation next week. Okay, Councilman.
I have one, since we're in committee, Councilmember Darby. This is something that I think is good and something that as we're talking about ARPA, we've talked about reimagining how public safety works. We're about to hire a violence coordinator. I think an Office of Public Safety is one thing. So I think I please involve, I know I'm interested, I know Councilmember Oliver is interested. This is something I think we can gain some traction with before budget time. So please involve us in this.
Yeah, so Councilmember Johnson, I've been emailing you and it's hard to get a meeting with you. Like I can't keep waiting on people.
Excuse me,
answer.
y'all. Excuse me.
Like, come on.
Okay, excuse me.
Well,
So we're gonna, excuse me, y'all have to do this offline, okay? So thank you, Councilman Darby. We're gonna hold that until you, get further information. Let's move on. Next is the overview of community response teams by the Lion King and Law Enforcement Partner LEAP. Is anyone on the Zoom call to speak in regards to this?
Yes, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, Lionel can't be with us tonight. His travel arrangements were changed. So what you see before you is the first slide. My name is Major Mike Hilliard. I'm a retired major from the Baltimore Police Department. I proudly served the citizens of Baltimore for 27 years, retired as a major. In my last position, I was head of Baltimore City's 911 Center and Police Dispatch Center. Next slide, please. LEAP is a nonprofit advocacy organization with a cadre of over 250 law enforcement officers, judges, and prosecutors that travel throughout the country advocating for intelligent criminal justice reform. As LEAP has been at the forefront of intelligible criminal justice reform for 20 years, one of our major focuses is restoring trust between the police and the community, because as you know, law enforcement can't be effective if people won't talk to the police. Another focus is dealing with the fact that police are asked to wear 20 different hats, and every year they put another one on the police's head. We want to identify the issues that don't need to be on the police's shoulders so the police can focus on public safety priorities. As many of you know, the police departments are already overwhelmed with short staff and expanding responsibilities. We see community responder programs as a way of relieving some of the pressure on police and allowing them to focus on more serious crimes. Next slide, please. LEAP has worked across the country to implement community responder programs. These programs involve sending well-trained, unarmed civilians to handle low-level calls of service, including many mental behavioral health calls, and other calls such as wellness and safety checks, unwanted persons, civil matters, escorts, loud music, and trespassing. There are three characteristics of community responder programs. The community responder acts as a true first responder and doesn't show up after the police have cleared a scene. The public can reach community responders by calling 911. They don't have to call a hard-to-remember 10-digit number. Community responder teams do not include police. If a team has an officer on it, we call it a co-responder team. This diagram shows how calls are divided between police and community responders. Traditionally, when someone calls 911, if it isn't a fire or medical emergency, the dispatcher sends police to the scene and police handle the incident. However, in the community responder sequence, the calls are triaged by the call taker, based on call type and other information. If the call does not meet community responder eligibility, the traditional model is followed and the police are dispatched. If the call is community responder eligible, the call is dispatched to the community responders. Next slide, please. Here are a few cities with community responders programs. Many other cities have some form of expanded response, while many others are currently developing programs. It is important to note that Cahoots in Eugene, Oregon, has been in service for over 30 years and inspired many of the models. In fact, a police officer who left Eugene and became the chief of police in Olympia, Washington, was so impressed with Cahoots that he started the crew team in Olympia. This shows police have supported the idea of community response since its inception. Next slide, please.
Okay,
While LEAP has not reviewed any calls for service from Wilmington, we have reviewed calls from other cities in order to give a range of examples. Here are results from cities ranging from around 20,000 to 750,000. These numbers show the ranking of how common these call types are in several cities we've worked in. For example, check well-being is the second most common reason people call 911 and get a police response in Evanston, Illinois. And it is the fourth in Amherst, Massachusetts, the third in Dayton, Ohio, the first in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. Every community is different, and looking at call data allows us to see why the public is requesting assistance and where that would be appropriate for community responders. Currently, Wilmington and Newcastle already has a mobile crisis intervention program which provides 24-hour emergency and in-person services as needed for mental health crises, which might include depression, suicide, or substance abuse. These services are accessed through a hotline. Like many other cities, we believe that Wilmington has crisis intervention team officers or CIT officers. These officers are specially trained to respond to mental health crisis calls. Unfortunately, under the current system, the mobile crisis team and CIT officers are not the same as community responders. Firstly, community responders handle a wider range of low-level calls far beyond mental health. Secondly, the mobile crisis team is not accessed through 911. Finally, sending a CIT trained officer to a mental health call is still taking an officer away from high priority calls. Next slide, please. LEAP provides expert advice to assist cities as they explore, conceptualize, and implement community responder programs. In phase one, the needs assessment, LEAP conducts qualitative and quantitative examinations of 911 call data, of narrative 911 call data, to determine which call type and the percentage of calls would likely be eligible for community responders. This two-pronged approach starts with identifying eligible calls based on the call narrative and not just the categorized description of calls. The call narratives are notes taken by the 911 call taker when a call for service is received. The narratives contain more detailed information regarding the circumstances surrounding the call for service. Based on the information reported by the 911 call taker in the call narrative, calls for service are categorized into types. Call types are the way dispatch codes 911 calls. These categories are often broad and don't capture the essence of the call for service. For example, LEAP analyzed call for service in Atlanta. Many of the calls were coded as fight in progress, which would indicate a physical altercation. However, our examination of call narratives found that often calls were coded fight in progress were actually for incidents such as homeless person in the parking lot of a fast food restaurant, or an individual playing their car radio stereo loudly and disturbing their neighbors. These incidents were not actual fights at all, but fight in progress was a catch-all term for many different incidents. This is why LEAP finds it imperative to conduct narrative analysis. Also in phase one, LEAP conducts conversations with police, dispatch, and other system stakeholders to gain a detailed understanding of existing city processes and programs. Finally, in phase one, LEAP researches existing community responder programs. LEAP has created a repository of data on community responder programs, including the way programs were designed, the types of responders, budgets, cost saving, types of calls that are handled, hours of operation, chain of command, including where the departments are housed, and the type of training responders receive. In phase two, LEAP works with community leaders and stakeholders to help them make informed decisions about program design. LEAP will provide detailed information via meeting agendas to cover and keep topics such as call types, 911 dispatch process, hours, budget, referral service, and timeline. Also, LEAP will engage police and dispatch to ensure their voices are heard throughout the entire process. LEAP will address the issues of safety from the perspective of police and our online in-house attorney, Lisa Tannenbaum, who has served as a city attorney, will address concerns over liability from a legal perspective. Based on that community-led process, LEAP produces an in-depth, detailed, bespoke preliminary report that outlines the structure of a program, including the number of responders, type of responders, responder qualifications, training, types of training, possible training organization, hours of operation, types of calls that responders would handle, budget, and program placement. This report becomes a blueprint for implementation. In Amherst, the program manager of the CREST program called the preliminary report for Amherst his Bible as it relates to the program. Once the city is committed to implementing a community responder model and hired a program manager in phase 3, LEAP continues to provide advice and guidance to assist the program manager in understanding the recommendations all the way through program launch. Next slide, please. LEAP will work with community stakeholders, including police, dispatch, fire, and community members to understand current city dynamics and keep stakeholders involved and informed throughout the process. LEAP will use the information gathered from community stakeholders in our repository of information on programs across the country to formulate a detailed needs assessment specifically for Wilmington. Next slide, please. In other communities, city officials often ask community members, do you want a program? Yes. And then they go into a back room and come out with a few months later with a program design. We want the community and stakeholders to be in the driver's seat, making informed decisions on meaningful aspects of the program so they can truly be tailored to Wilmington. In the second phase of the scope, LEAP will act as a project management team, organizing agendas, meetings with stakeholder group chairs, present key content, manage the timeline, correspond with stakeholders, and shape community-led recommendations into implementable action steps. Next slide is questions.
Councilman Johnson?
Thank you very much, Mike, for sharing this. I did have a heads up about this project. Thanks to Councilmember Darby, I've been involved, looped in with you and Mr. King regarding this project. We needed this a long time ago in Wilmington. It's an issue I know I face in my district, and many of us on this panel face in our districts, where we have an issue. Most of the issues aren't involving robberies or gun violence, but it's the quality of life issues, and that's what's pushing good middle-class families from leaving the city, and then pushes them out of the city. So thank you for coming. I guess my just pointed question as looking towards the budget season, right, is if we were to have a pilot program once we get to phase 3, do we have even an estimate or placeholder as to what a pilot program will cost in a city the size of Wilmington? Because I've studied a lot of these programs, and it seems like they do pilot programs first before they implement a full 24/7 model.
So candidly, it's difficult for me to quote you a figure right off the bat. What I can tell you is, I would imagine police officers in the city of Wilmington, depending on their seniority, cost you about $120,000 annually if you consider salary, benefits, training, equipment, and all of that. So you'd be paying a lot less to community responders. So depending on the size of the program and everything else, that would stipulate the budget. So in order to set up the budget, you have to start looking at the call data and the call narratives to figure out how many calls these people are going to handle. And then you can start figuring out what your budget is. Now, our suggestion for a pilot would be that instead of just focusing in one specific geographic area of Wilmington, you do it citywide, but you do about 50% of the calls you actually intend to do, thereby reducing the number of calls they're handling. And that would be significant. That would be 50% less than if you were fully funded and you had enough teams to answer all your calls for service.
Okay, and but
Follow up.
and so as a trying to make this more abstract, well, this is an abstract concept, but putting in a reality for our citizens who are watching. So this model would assist with, say, if we have someone who's high or strung out on heroin or fentanyl, which unfortunately we see too many of our brothers and sisters on that in the city. Could someone then call? You would call 911, or you would call the pilot number? Like, how would that work in real time?
Well, even in the pilot, what we would suggest is it be done through 911, because candidly, over the years, and I was a contributor to it, we have trained people that when they need a response, they call 911. So the idea is the call goes through 911, it gets triaged. If it's appropriate for the community responder, it goes to them. And then during the pilot, you would only handle 50% of the call types that you would if you were fully operational. But I, as a police officer, I would ask you in your imagination, it's difficult looking at this gray-haired man right now, but in 1975 or late 80s, imagine me in my early 20s in a blue suit with a badge and a hat and a gun showing up at a call for service. Maybe you called me because you're having issues with your child. And when I walk in the door, looking at the members of the council, I would question whether they would think good things are going to happen when I walk in. And the problem is, and I was a de-escalator, and was that I would spend the first 5 to 10 minutes of the call having to do things to convince the complainant that I was not there to lock anybody up. I was not, I was not there to escalate the situation. I was there to try to diffuse it and refer people to services. And the other problem is, if I walk up to somebody who's had a bad interaction with the police before, my uniform and my badge have already escalated the situation. Whereas if a community responder responds, it's a totally different situation.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have any more questions from council members? Do we have any members from the,
Madam Chairwoman, you have a question from Councilwoman Darby.
Councilman Darby?
Yes, thank you, Council Chair. I want to say thank you to the Law Enforcement Action Partnership. One of the things that I am looking to do with the ideas and things I have for the council to make our city better is to partner with organizations who have the best practices in regards, specifically for this, in regards to community policing, community responder models. And this is a group of law enforcement officers, organizations and departments across the country who are talking about making our system more effective and fair, right? We don't hear that conversation in Wilmington, right? So I think it's really key and important that we're establishing programs like this. So I do want to say thank you, and I'm glad that you're able to talk to my city council colleagues tonight, and I hope that we've been needed this, right? But I hope that we can take this step next year as we're talking about our budget to make an investment into our city. And what's really important to know is that by having a community response team, you're actually saving money. There's like a savings to this. So yes, it's going to cost money, but in the long run, it's going to save money. And law enforcement officers can actually focus on trying to solve these crimes, right? Instead of focusing on things that they're not even trained to do. So they can actually focus on crime in our city, which is an issue or a whole nother discussion or problem we're trying to solve. So I just want to say thank you again. I am so glad to be working with law enforcement officers, organizations, and departments, this organization, to look at how do we do community policing and to really have real conversations with law enforcement officers who are willing to have these conversations and not just shun you, not say you're wrong, and to say, yes, there's a problem and I want to work with you. This is real community policing, and I want to say thank you for having organizations like this, because I'm so glad I found you, because it's far in between that we have these real true conversations like this in the city of Wilmington. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Darby. I think the LEAP has been here before. Okay, any other questions from outside the public?
Madam Chairwoman, Councilwoman Burkita Fields is online.
Councilman Fields, do you have a question? Or I mean, make a comment or anything? Okay, I would like to acknowledge, we have Councilman Fields on the line, and also we have Council Member Nathan Fields on the line also. Do we have any questions from the public or questions from any council members?
On leave.
One more question from Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, I just, again,
Comment.
follow up with Councilmember Darby said. This goes hand in hand with what we're doing with the landscape analysis.
Yeah.
And just to let the public know, we are taking this very seriously. We actually have minimum weekly meetings talking about the landscape analysis and implementing that. So this, I can see this can be intertwined into that, because at the end of the day, public safety and also cost savings is important. So we are taking this seriously. Council has admittedly dropped the ball in the past in terms of following up with our projects. And so we have taken the anti-violence landscape analysis, social workers, crisis intervention teams. We're already looking at how we can supplement that with ARPA funds for now, and then we can make it permanent in the city budget. So, my colleagues up here, they've been in the meetings too, and we're working double time. So, LEAP, I look forward to having you as a partner as well involved in this, so we can make our city safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson, Council Member Johnson, and I'd like to echo that. So we have a lot of other organizations that are involved with this violence prevention program, so this will be another one we could just add on. If there's no other questions from council members of the public, I will ask for there's a motion to adjourn the meeting. Very good, positive meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved in second, properly moved in second. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much for everybody coming out tonight to the public safety meeting. Great meeting. Thanks.